It's kind of crazy, right? Like everywhere you look today, it feels like we're on this runaway train of progress, especially when it comes to science and tech. It's like boom, 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 new discoveries, new gadgets, new possibilities every single day. Things are changing so fast, it'd probably make our grandparents' heads spin.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's mind-boggling, the pace of change.
And here's the thing, when you take a step back from all the shiny new toys and look at the world as a whole, it's like, well, is it really all that rosy? We've got these conflicts that seem like they'll never end, this huge gap between the super rich and everyone else, and this giant looming shadow of climate change hanging over everything. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, is all this progress really making things better for us, for humanity as a whole?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's like we're rocketing forward, but are we headed in the right direction?
Exactly. And that feeling, that kind of unsettling sense that something's not quite right, that's what we're diving into today. We're exploring the ideas of Shrii Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, who offers this really unique and thought-provoking way of looking at the relationship between what we call civilization, the amazing advances of science, and something he calls spiritual progress.
Sarkar's work provides this really interesting lens for understanding our current situation. It's not just about the latest tech trends, it's about the deeper forces shaping our societies.
Right, and the source we're looking at today, one of his insightful discourses, really unpacks these interconnected ideas in a powerful way. So for everyone listening, our mission today is to explore this framework together and see if it can shed some light on the crossroads we're at and maybe even offer some unexpected food for thought about the paths ahead. Be prepared for some aha moments.
Absolutely. It's about peeling back the layers and really examining what it means for a society to truly thrive and evolve in a meaningful, holistic way.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Sarkar talks a lot about civilization, but his definition might surprise you. It's not quite what we usually think of when we hear that word.
You're absolutely right. For Sarkar, civilization is all about this subtle sense of refinement in how we express ourselves. It's not about skyscrapers or fancy gadgets. It's something much deeper than that. He gives this really simple but powerful example to illustrate what he means.
Oh, the example about greeting guests. I remember that one.
Exactly. He compares the bluntness of just saying come when someone arrives at your door versus the warmth and consideration saying please come in. It's that little word please, that added layer of thoughtfulness and respect that's a sign of civilization for Sarkar. It's this understated elegance in how we interact and express ourselves. It's not just what we do, but how we do it, That subtle please makes all the difference. It shows a certain level of societal maturity and awareness.
It's like the difference between using a basic tool to get the job done and having a beautifully crafted instrument that reflects care and artistry. Both might serve a purpose, but one speaks to a higher level of consideration and refinement.
Exactly. And this refinement, Sarkar argues, is intimately linked to what he calls discriminative judgment. It's about thinking before we act, carefully weighing the impact of our words and deeds on ourselves and others.
Yeah.
So discriminative judgment basically means we're not just reacting impulsively, we're pausing, reflecting, and choosing our actions with awareness.
Right? It's not just about surface level politeness. It's about having this deeper level of awareness guiding our behavior.
Precisely. And to really unpack this idea of discriminative judgment in action, Sarkar compares the Indian and European social systems. He points out that in the traditional Indian system, women are often given a motherly status, which comes with deep respect within that particular role. But he also notes that in certain European societies, women historically might have had more practical rights in various fields, even if the motherly status wasn't as explicitly emphasized.
It gets really interesting here because it challenges this simplistic idea that one society is automatically more civilized than another.
Exactly. It's not a black and white issue. Sarkar is highlighting the complexity of making such judgments. Each system might exhibit certain refinements and lack others. His key point is that true civilization isn't just about having noble ideals. It's about actively putting this discriminative judgment into practice in our daily lives, in the structures of our society. It's about how our values translate into real-world actions.
That's a powerful point. So civilization for Sarkar is about refined expression driven by thoughtful judgment put into action. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something we often associate with progress: culture. How does Sarkar differentiate between culture and civilization?
He draws a clear distinction. Culture, he says, is the collective form of all the expressions of life. It's like the tapestry of a society. It's art, music, traditions, intellectual atmosphere, the whole shebang. He emphasizes that culture is mainly an expression of the intellectual stratum, the realm of ideas and beliefs that shape a society's worldview.
Okay, so culture is like this broad canvas of how a group of people live, think, and express themselves collectively. Where does civilization fit into this?
Civilization, on the other hand, is the expression of the more physical aspects of life, how we organize our societies, our material advancements, our technologies. But the key here is that it's all filtered through that lens of refinement we were just talking about.
Ah, I see. So you can be materially civilized in the sense of having fancy infrastructure and all the latest gadgets, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a high level of cultural or intellectual development. And it certainly doesn't guarantee civilization in Sarkar's sense of the word. It's like putting a fancy facade on a building with a shaky foundation.
Exactly. Sarkar emphasizes that true civilization, in his definition, needs intellectual development as its bedrock. You can have all the comforts in the world, but without that underlying intellectual and ethical framework, without that cultivated refinement in how we think and act, you can't truly be considered civilized in his view. It's like having a supercomputer but only using it to play simple games.
That's a great analogy. So a truly civilized society needs both the material advancements and the intellectual and ethical maturity to guide those advancements. Now, let's bring science into the equation. How do civilization and science interact in Sarkar's view?
This is where it gets really interesting. Sarkar argues that civilization and science progress together, hand in hand, like two dancers moving in sync. Advancements in science can pave the way for a more comfortable, materially advanced society. And that, in turn, can create the space and resources for cultural and civilizational growth, so they can feed off each other in a positive way.
So ideally, it's a win-win situation when they're working in harmony.
In an ideal world, yes. But, and this is important, Sarkar warns that when scientific progress gets too far ahead of civilization, that's when civilization is in danger of collapsing. He uses a powerful metaphor. Science is like the engine of a car, but civilization is the steering wheel and the navigation system. You need both to get where you want to go safely.
Whoa, that's a powerful image. What does he mean by science getting too far ahead of civilization?
He points to the examples of ancient Egypt and Greece. These civilizations thrived when their scientific advancements were balanced with their core values, with that sense of refinement in their culture. They achieved great things. But, Sarkar argues, when the pursuit of pleasure and material possessions, often fueled by unchecked scientific progress, started to overshadow those values, that's when things started to unravel. It's like letting the tail wag the dog.
So science, which is meant to be a tool for progress, can actually become a destructive force if it's not guided by a strong ethical framework.
Precisely. And Sarkar offers a really specific definition of science in this context, that which teaches the proper use of material things. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, it's about understanding how to use that knowledge wisely and responsibly for the benefit of humanity.
Right, so it's not just about what we discover, but about the wisdom with which we apply those discoveries.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that if science reaches its peak without a corresponding development in civilization, it can actually lead to more harm than good. Imagine, for example, having incredibly powerful technologies without the ethical understanding to guide their use. It's a recipe for disaster.
It's like giving a child a set of power tools without teaching them how to use them safely.
Perfect analogy. He stresses that while studying and advancing science is essential, we should never give it more importance than cultivating civilization itself.
That's a sobering thought, especially for us today. We tend to put science and technology on a pedestal, but maybe we haven't given enough thought to the ethical and social implications. Are we perhaps at risk of letting our scientific progress outpace our civilizational wisdom?
That is the crucial question we need to be asking ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked about civilization as refined expression based on thoughtful judgment, its relationship with culture, and how it needs to walk hand in hand with science, but ideally hold a position of precedence. Now, Sarkar also brings in this intriguing concept of intuitional knowledge or spiritual development. Where does that fit into all of this?
This is where Sarkar's framework expands even further. He highlights that in India, there were historical periods like the Tantric and Gupta eras where both civilization and science flourished simultaneously, with civilization maintaining that crucial higher position. He actually calls the Gupta period a golden period because of this harmonious development across these different dimensions.
So it wasn't just about material or intellectual achievements in isolation, it was about a kind of holistic flourishing of society.
Exactly. And then he contrasts this with the periods of decline that followed the Gupta era, which he partly attributes to a neglect of scientific progress. This lack of scientific advancement contributed to stagnation. He even mentions the Pathan period as an example of societal inertia, where neither civilization nor science saw much progress. So it's not an either-or situation. Both need to be actively nurtured.
Hmm.
And underpinning both, he reminds us, is intellectual development. You need sharp minds for both refining values and pushing the boundaries of science.
It's all interconnected, so where does spiritual development fit into this interconnected web?
Sarkar proposes that spiritual progress is greatly aided by a happy blending of civilization and science. He acknowledges that you might be able to achieve some level of inner understanding without this perfect harmony. But when science and civilization are working together constructively, it creates a much richer environment for spiritual growth. It's like when you have a healthy plant that's getting the right nutrients, it's more likely to blossom.
It's like creating fertile ground for those deeper insights to take root.
Precisely. But he also issues a strong warning. Focusing solely on spiritual progress while neglecting civilization and science is, in his words, useless. It's like trying to build a castle on a foundation of sand. You need that strong ethical and intellectual base supported by a sound understanding and use of the material world to make real progress on a spiritual level.
So it's not about rejecting the material world or ignoring science. It's about integrating them with strong values to foster more holistic progress. Now, bringing this to the present day, with all the incredible scientific advancements we've made, what does Sarkar's framework tell us about our current situation and our responsibilities going forward?
Sarkar directly asks, what is our duty today? He compares ancient and modern India, observing that while we've far surpassed the ancients in terms of scientific progress, the level of civilization in those earlier period, particularly in the time of figures like Vashishta, Vishvamitra, and Astabhakra, these were individuals known for their profound wisdom and ethical leadership.
Right, figures who really embodied those refined values.
Exactly. And Sarkar suggests that in our current age, the dominance of science has actually led to a decline in civilization. That subtle sense of refinement, that careful consideration in our actions might have taken a back seat to our technological prowess.
This resonates with a lot of the anxieties people feel today, right? The conflicts, the inequality, the climate crisis. It's like maybe we've let our technological capabilities outstrip our ethical and social wisdom.
That's the core of the issue. However, Sarkar doesn't end on a pessimistic note. He actually offers a message of optimism. He points out that because our scientific capabilities are so advanced today, if we can raise the level of civilization again, if we can prioritize those refined values and that discriminative judgment in all our endeavors, we have the potential to reach a greater height than ever before. We have the tools. It's about how we choose to use them.
So it's not a doomsday prediction. There's incredible potential for progress, but it depends on us making a conscious choice to put civilization, those ethical values, that refined framework back in the driver's seat, guiding our science and technology towards a genuinely beneficial future.
Exactly. The potential is immense, but it hinges on our ability to cultivate not just scientific innovation, but also a corresponding elevation in our civilizational values. It's about making sure that our powerful scientific engine is steered by a wise and ethical hand.
So to sum up our deep dive into Sarkar's perspective, the key takeaway is this crucial balance between scientific advancement and the ongoing refinement of our civilization. And remember, this refinement isn't just about being polite. It's about this deep-rooted, discriminative judgment that should guide all our actions and shape our societies. When science outpaces this wisdom, we risk undermining our own progress. But when we harmonize science with these values and maybe even nurture our spiritual growth through this integration, the potential for a truly advanced, ethical, and flourishing future is enormous.
Absolutely. True progress isn't just about what we can achieve technologically, but about the wisdom, the ethics, the values that guide our choices and actions.
And that brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. Given how fast technology is changing, what concrete steps can you take as an individual? And what can we do as societies to make sure civilization not only keeps up with this progress, but actually leads the way? How do we ensure that these powerful tools we're developing are used ethically and sustainably, steering us towards a brighter future for everyone? It's a big question, but one that's absolutely worth grappling with.
It is. The responsibility for creating and maintaining this balance rests with each and every one of us.